Great. Hi, everyone. And I'm just going to talk to you today about the Residential Efficiency Scorecard. So I work in DEECA, the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action in the Victorian Government. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown on what the scorecard is and what we've been doing in the last year or so with scorecard. So scorecard is a nationally funded project for energy efficiency rating and advice in Victoria, developed by the Victorian Government. It's available across Australia now. It was developed in Victoria, released in Victoria in 2017 and released into the rest of Australia in 2019. And so as a team, the scorecard team accredits the assessors, and it includes training and auditing. And we developed and run the tool in the cloud. So the scorecard assessment looks at the building shell of the house as well as the appliances, the fixed appliances in the house. So the heating, cooling, lighting, hot water, and PV and spas and pools. An assessor will visit the home and sit down and talk with the householder and about things like privacy, code of conduct, what the assessment is going to be, and then walk around the home and collects all the household data into the tool. And then at the end of the assessment, sits down with the householder and talks through the certificate that is produced, also what they've seen around the house while they've been doing it, and upgrade options based on what's on the certificate and also based on what they've seen in the house and what the householder is wanting for their house. So this is what our certificate looks like. The main headline rating is a star rating out of 10, and it's a cost-based rating. So it's how much the house costs to run for the year based on the modelling and what the assessor has input. It uses average user behaviours, so it can't be tailored to a particular householder, so that when a house is sold, it's the same rating for the next person in the house. 3 stars is the average that you'll get in Australia for a house, and 8-star is a very energy efficient house. 9-star is a house that's about zero cost to run because it's got solar PV on the roof. And a 10-star house has a lot of solar that is well offsetting the cost to run the house. The next ratings we have are the hot and cold weather ratings. So the hot weather rating is how well a house will perform in a hot spell without any use of air conditioning, and vice versa for a cold weather rating. So they come with recommendations that are modelled in the tool for how to improve the house. Under that is the solar PV. If a house has got solar PV, it will show the star rating without that solar PV to see how well the house is performing when you take the PV out of the equation. On the back side of the certificate, it looks at the appliances, the heaters, coolers, hot water, lighting, and spas and pools, and the efficiency of each of those appliances and how much energy they're using out of all of the energy for the fixed appliances in the house, and then upgrade recommendations from that. So we've hit 2 major milestones in the last quarter. We had our 150th Scorecard Assessor accredited, and we also have our 11,000th Scorecard assessment finalised across Australia. So this year we've had a few major projects there's been the New South Wales baseline project, which is over 1,000 houses to look at to get a baseline for the housing stock throughout the state. We've also had the Resilient Building Council develop a multi-hazard tool, which looks at bushfires, floods, storms, heat waves, and energy efficiency in houses. And we've been included under the Victorian energy upgrades from June of last year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Victorian energy upgrades in a little bit. So this is the past 3 years, what the number of assessors and the number of assessments. They've been on a steady upward trajectory, which is great. And that's where our assessors are by state. Because the tool was developed in Victoria and initially released in Victoria, it's got a lot more visibility in Victoria. So we've got the majority of the assessors and the majority of the assessments have been undertaken in Victoria. So we regularly run customer surveys to see what's happening in the houses, and they always come back positive about our assessments and our assessors. So 91% of customers are taking action as a result of the assessment. The scorecard tool is designed to be an education tool for householders. We get an accredited, knowledgeable assessor into a house to talk to a householder about how their house is performing, what's going well and what's not going well, and how they can improve it. So at the end of an assessment, a householder should know more about energy efficiency than before they started. So 91% of customers will take action or already have taken action, which is great. And all of the customers agree that the assessors are acting in their best interests and that they explain things well, which is really good to hear. So I'm just going to quickly take you through the Victorian Energy Upgrades program. So it's a greenhouse emissions reduction program in Victoria, and it helps Victorians upgrade their homes and business with energy efficiency products by offering discounts and rebates. So energy efficiency certificates are assigned for each activity. There's quite a large number of activities that are available under VEU. And the accredited persons can generate these certificates, which are then bought by the energy retailers to offset the targets that they have to meet. So some activities might be hot water systems and air conditioners, commercial lighting, draft proofing, refrigerated cabinets in cafes and stores. There's a whole heap of activities. So in June last year, they introduced a new activity called the Home Energy Rating Assessment. And 2 VEECs, so 2 certificates were assigned for each assessment that was carried out. And so a VEEC currently costs around $104, and that changes with the market. If there's more activities that are active, then the VEEC price will drop. If there's less, then the VEEC price will go up. So a lot of policy work went into getting assessments into VEU. An issues paper went out for consultation. There was a lot of interest. There was 69 responses, and all of these were reviewed by VEU, and a decision was made to include assessments under VEU. And a number of conditions needed to be met to include a tool under VEU, and Scorecard was the only tool for existing houses that met all of the requirements. And so it was endorsed under VEU as the tool that can be used. So VEU was a bit of a different direction for the scorecard team to go in. We had to look at the risks that could come from low quality assessments. So the 2 main risks that we identify that were new to us was quite fast, low quality assessments, because assessors are being paid for the number of assessments they can carry out in a day. And also on selling of products that an assessor or the accredited person might also supply. So they may be using Scorecard to get somebody into the house, and then they sit down with them at the end and show them the result and say, oh, it just so happens you need a new hot water system because yours isn't very efficient, and we can supply one of those for you. So we were really careful about how we were going to deal with low quality assessments and on selling of products. So we needed additional auditing to keep on top of it, as well as additional customer surveys to see what was actually happening in houses. So what we found in the year and a bit since we've been active under VEU is that we have lower cost and no cost assessments in Victoria. So there are free assessments out there. There are companies that are offering free assessments, as you can see on the back of this bus here that's trundling around Melbourne, that you can call a phone number and get a free assessment to your house. We found that it reduces the cost of scorecard assessments by about $150, which is good. And additional auditing has found no major quality issues with the assessments. And we've done a phone survey of customers that are getting free assessments. And we've found that they take about 80 minutes in the house to do a free assessment compared to 135 minutes for an assessment that householders are still paying some amount for. So we think that the difference in that time is due to smaller houses being undertaken for the free assessments and maybe apartments. And so assessors are getting the data collection done a lot quicker than other assessors may be doing. We also found that there's an 18-minute discussion at the end to talk through the certificate and the upgrades and what the next steps might be for the householder. So that's 18 minutes for the free assessments compared to 22 minutes for the paid assessments. And so that was really heartening to see that even though the assessments are much quicker, that the amount of advice that's going to the householder is still a really good solid chunk of time to sit down, talk to a householder and answer their questions. So this is just a quick look at assessor numbers in Victoria since we became an activity under VEU, and there's quite a sharp uptake that's happened in the last little while because of it coming under VEU. And this just looks at the assessment numbers since it became an activity. So the assessment numbers have definitely increased. In April was the first free assessments were offered in Victoria. And you can see for October, 97% of assessments undertaken in Victoria were VEU assessments. And about half of those were free assessments and about half were paid. And so that's the highest number that we've had to date. We've run surveys of just the VEU customers, and the surveys have come back very similar results to previous surveys. So the customers are still getting the same quality of service from these free assessments as they are for paid assessments. And so us going as an activity under VEU has actually been really good. It's been really good for our program to make it a little bit more robust and to be able to handle more assessments at scale. So it's all been very good. The customers have loved it and the assessors are loving it. And I'm just going to leave it there. So we've got a lot more information on our website if you'd like to go there and find out more about Scorecard. And you can email us anytime on that email address if you've got any questions. Thanks for your time. I know it's the end of the day and I apologize for being the last speaker, but...
Well, thank you for being the last speaker. That's a tough position to be.
It is tough.
Questions for Deanne? I was wondering, do you have a breakdown of who's taking up these assessments in terms of the renters versus home ownership or income levels or anything like that? Are there any patterns there?
Traditionally, it's always been, there's been less renters that will take up a scorecard assessment because there's less that they can do in a house. And so they're not going to pay $300 for an assessment when there's only so much they can do without the landlord's permission. That has changed a little bit under VEU, particularly with the way that they were allowed to go door knocking this year. And so they could just door knock, and it didn't matter if it was a renter or a homeowner. And so we were getting more renters at that stage, but door knocking has now been made illegal across all of VEU. They're not allowed to do that anymore. And so they're using different methods like the buses, and they're out on bikes doing bike advertising, and they're going to do mainstream radio advertising. They're doing lots of different advertising now. But we will still be getting less renters than maybe we would like to get.
Thanks, Sean. I was just wondering if there's any sort of regulatory settings that would enforce the usage of these, or, for example, as in the UK, say a certain level of scorecard rating would be required in order to let a house or rent a home out, for example, or whether they have to be required when you sell, something like that.
Yeah. So I don't know about it in other countries, but that's been on the table for a long, long time in Australia, many, many years. And it's gathering some momentum at the moment to have mandatory disclosure for initially point of lease and then point of sale. It's still possibly a couple of years away if we can get going with it. It's being led by the Commonwealth government, and then the rest of the states are kind of waiting to see what they come up with before they'll act on it. So we don't have any regulatory anything for them at the moment for any of that or for scorecard. So we're just waiting to see what happens in that space.
Hi, thanks for that. A really interesting program. I'm interested particularly in these VEECs. So it's kind of like a voluntary carbon market, is that right? And so this creates carbon credits. Are they freely able to be bought by anybody, like a business wanting to offset, or is it limited to who can buy those VEECs?
I'm not an expert in VEU or VEECs, but I think it's definitely a market. Anybody can go in and buy the VEECs. The energy producers have to do it because that's the way they get to their targets. And so a majority of them are held by the electricity producers, for example, but other people and other companies can buy them, as far as I understand.
One more question. That's all right.
I'm interested in, you said 90% of customers are taking action. Do you have insights into what they're doing? So whether it's behavioral or they're making changes to their home, and whether you even go a step further and ask about like impacts that's had on either improving comfort or reducing bills?
Yeah, so we do ask about all that. I don't have the slides on it. It will be on our website, or I can share some more information about it. So in the most recent round of surveys that we did, which was the VEU ones, the main upgrade that people have undertaken is ceiling insulation. So it just becomes our main upgrade. After that, it would be draft proofing, so sealing gaps around windows and doors, and just general gaps in the house. That usually is our second main upgrade. Lots and lots of people are upgrading the heaters and coolers, and hot water is getting a lot of use at the moment because you can get quite a number of rebates in Australia at the moment for hot water systems. And in Victoria in particular, you can get a lot of rebates for heat pump hot water systems through VEU and through Commonwealth rebates. So those would probably be our main ones, I think. PV also gets a lot of rebates in Australia or in Victoria. But that has slowed down a bit because we just went gangbusters with PV 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And it's slowed down a little bit now, particularly with the feed-in tariffs being so low for solar. So yes, we do have details on all that, and I just don't have them on hand.
Great. Thanks very much. Join me in thanking Deanne.